Hello and welcome to Cathodes and How to Make Them. This is simply going to be a YouTube video that is for everyone who does not have time or the drive to sit down and actually read through the full document, which is understandable, which is why I'm making this video. This is being made by the author. I'm known online as RGB and will be continuing to use that name. I do have a DeviantArt and other things, and if you actually enjoyed this reading and document, please share the Cathodes document with others. I am just trying to get this off the ground. I do not make any money off of it, so whatever you can do to share it would be great. So, this document starts off with a few notes from the author, aka me, and let us begin. I want anyone who comes across this document that I, RGB, want this to be an open species for the most part. Of course, the rules here are kind of pick and choose, kind of think of like a salad bar. You kind of pick and choose what you want. And this is more of a guideline, not necessarily hard rules you have to follow in order to make it a cathode, but it has to follow most of these guidelines. And you, of course, always want to have to consider it a cathode. Please do not go harassing people who have similar looking characters. TV heads with animal features are a common trope. There are still features that make cathodes. Please make sure that is there. And remember, it doesn't have to, quote unquote, follow the canon 100% of the time. For example, a friend of mine made a cathode that's called ECU. It doesn't necessarily come from the same origins as RGB or Fenrir, but it is still a cathode in the end of the day. So, just remember that it usually has a TV for a head or other appliance with a screen, and it's robotic in nature. And here, just to cover my own butt, not every CRTV furry is a cathode. Please do not be rude or bully someone if they have a CRTV furry and shove it into this category. The cathode species still has defining features such as floating head, being mainly made of machine parts, having a simple frame with little to no fluff, depending on your desired choice. And I know that it should not have to be said, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I then have a base on the actual document if you ever get to read it. I believe I will put it in the description when I do actually get enough footage to make this into a proper video. And let's use the quick start section. So first, choose your screen type. CRTV, smart device, etc. Usually older the better, something fancy like that. Decide animal traits. So you can have a fish cathode, you can have a cat cathode. You do not have to be restricted to just wolf or canine features. That's just personally what I used, and in fact, RGB is like a mix of like 7 different animals. He doesn't have a defined animal species, unlike Fenrir, who is a wolf after the name of the, Norse mythology, god that he's named after. So, choose screen type, animal powers, select power source, fusion cell, battery, food-based, etc. You can actually have a bunch of them. For example, RGB runs off a fusion cell as his main power source. However, you also can run off of food, batteries, and I believe I'm going to give him solar cell. I'm not entirely sure whether or not I should do that. After all, I do not like to make a Mary Sue. And then figure out their background, whether or not they were from the military, a corporate product, maybe even a runaway. And just remember, these are an outline. The rest of this document I'm going to continue to go over is going to still give you more of the nitty-gritty, if you will. So this is an actual in-universe document. So this was published in the New York Times. Yes, I did make a pun. Deal with it. And this came out in 2008. However, most of the events in the free will and things are a lot more modern. So we can assume that there have been years of buildup and other things that have been happening, that things were just hid under. Just to clear up the lore there, because I do realize I was not very good at making a timeline here, because I was not thinking fully through that. I make most of this stuff up as I go. You can judge me for that as much as you like, but that's just how I roll. So, general information. These are from the notes of Dr. R. Cathodes are a special kind of furry, or beastmen. They are much like protogens in the way that they're part organic and machine. However, they're completely man-made. The first known one of the species is RGB, and currently the only known one at the time of him making this document. This race of beastmen or furry had the CRTV as a head, or other appliance. They're able to change what they display on it, and they're able to consume food for energy. They also have other sources of power, such as fusion or fission cells, so yes, we can go nuclear here. Batteries. They do have an odd habit of thinking nearly every other CRTV is another of their species, due to the fact they have a floating head that can be detached. That is very much a possibility. Until, of course, they realize otherwise. This is a habit that they can get over, however, it does take time. Most cathodes seem to be digigrade, and are usually bipedal. There are some that can walk on fours, but it's not often. It's not very common. Some have been found to prefer all fours, as just discussed. It is not common. In rare situations, a cathode will be planigrade, so like more human, like in the legs, like Fenrir is. And then, in other cases, they have the ability to swap between the two. RGB would be one of those specific cases due to lore reasons. Cathodes can be made with any creature with a strong enough soul to survive the transfer process, including but not limited to beastmen, protogens, humans, and any other conscious living species. So Archons would be included, which is a species by Andra 5 Arts on DeviantArt. I do highly recommend you check them out. They did a lovely job in helping me with some of the lore and making their own species. So please, feel free to check them out. I'll probably make a link to their DeviantArt page in the description as well. So then there's some photos here. RGB, one of 2 cathodes currently known to humanity. Note, RGB has another entity inside him, the purple one being called Krieg. This special feature is part of some of the first gens, and would be something that I would prefer for you to ask permission for. However, really, the rule with first gens is that they must have a sign that they were a part of the Soviet Union at one point due to their origins, and usually end up having a glitch or a little feature that makes them a bit unique and different from a standard cathode. So like a little quirk, if you will. For example, RGB has himself, the soul, and Krieg as his own separate entity inside of his head. Kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. Then another thing. And then Fenrir has some pictures. And then power. Cathodes are able to be powered in many ways, in nearly every way known to man. Nuclear, coal, oil, batteries, as well as green energy, and of course consumption of food. Cathodes eat in an odd way. Oftentimes it will seem like they just shove food against their screen and just take a bite like any normal human. Currently there's no known reason why their screens can break the law of physics. Currently the best theory is that it's a form of nanites that have been implanted into the cathodes. Others also use a method where their mouths do not open. However, they push the food against their screens. It seems to glitch into their systems. This is more common among anodes than cathodes. There is no known side effect of a cathode not eating. However, they're known to get irritable. Yes, your little cathode toaster boy can get hangry. Make sure to feed them. Or if they do not eat, when a cathode is either deactivated or runs out of power, is the equivalent of being dead until a new power source emerges. The cathode's organic body parts can die, but it will leave the cathode in a weakened state until they can get new body parts or can heal them. However, healing takes a large amount of energy, therefore isn't often used. Note with this. Cathodes do have a 100% effective digestive system. So they do fully get all the calories that are inside food. Granted, in theory, you could have them eat pretty much anything. However, if you have them eat a rock, it isn't going to necessarily work as well as if you give them actual food, which is partially one of their downfalls. If they're in the wild, they are kind of screwed unless they can hunt for themselves. It still has to be a form of food. You cannot just have them eating the last bottles for food source. However, batteries are an A-OK thing for them to eat, as well as anything radioactive. So feel free to feed your little cathode boy a bunch of uranium. It'll keep him powered for centuries. All right, how are cathodes made? Cathodes were originally going to be super soldiers for the Soviets, supposedly somewhere in the 1970s to 1980s. More so the 1970s, which was when RGB was made. Most, if not all, the files on the products were destroyed. However, the Soviets collapsed, other nations found and experimented on these creatures. Noted, the Soviets did indeed collapse, however, they collapsed into different factions. So the Soviet Union is still technically a thing. It's just a bunch of different factions, just to clear that up on the lore side there. Other nations found and experimented on these creatures. You can tell if the cathode is a first-generation cathode by the hammer and sickle under their chest plate or on their shoulder patch or wherever you decide to put it, but it is somewhere on their body. As well as being shorter than most humans, typically found around 5'6" to 5'8". These cathodes are seen to try and stay in the military most of the time due to the fact that they are soldiers by nature. But some have indeed left. The way cathode is made, that a human soul is transferred into a robotic body. Of course, as we established earlier, it could be really any creature with a strong enough soul, but it's been transferred, but that rule still applies. It must be transferred into a robotic body. Oftentimes, they forget who they are, and however, they can be reminded of their human life and continue to live it. Important note, cathode souls reside inside the robot's code, therefore allowing a black box system if necessary, which, if you do not know what a black box system is, but it pretty much allows them to go into a new body if their body runs out of power or is destroyed. If you need any examples, it would be something from like Nier Automata or something, which I totally did not rip it out of from and never, ever would use a bunch of different IPs to inspire me for most of this. Anyway, however, cathodes are not common. As of recent events, they have been known to explore and go to different planets to meet other species. Due to the rediscovery of the species, we have figured out how to make them useful to the public. However, the standard modern-day cathode usually stands at the height of a person. Inside somewhere around, they're usually put somewhere around 5'9". Of course, you can always get a requested height as well. Eyes are dependent on the soul, so the color of the eyes, or sometimes the eye shape, is dependent on the soul inside of them. So, for example, RGB's eyes, even if he was in someone else's body, will always be green. Krieg's eyes will always be purple. Fenrir's eyes will always be blue. However, the background of the screen, so what their eyes sit upon, will be dependent on who actually owns the body, etc. Any shape and color. However, the different soul in the same body, the eye color will change depending on who's in charge, so in control of the body. And of course, some have multiple colored eyes. And due to the nature of how a cathode is made, it is not possible for a cathode to reproduce. I'm looking at you, all you R34 artists. I know it's not going to stop you, but I'm just noting it, so therefore I don't see a bunch of you guys screwing around with it. Alright. Which means you cannot have a cathode child unless you were to take a child and transfer it into a cathode body. However, it's been deemed unethical. Cathodes also are not assigned traditional genders. That is chosen when the cathode are properly made. Normally they are the same gender as the soul inside, however, some have chose to be genderless or otherwise. Pretty much because they're robots, they're whatever they decide to be. What animals are cathodes made of? Cathodes don't seem to be one species in particular. However, it's common for cats and dog cathodes. However, there are some that are insect cathodes. And cathodes' bodies are made of a mixture of biological mass and machine. Cathodes are about 15% biological to 85% machine. Majority of the biomass is in the skin and digestive systems, and it can vary as the soul is transferred to the new body. The animal DNA is added, and when it starts to grow, it becomes a part of the soul that inhabits the body, which is why many cathodes have animal instincts and the ability to enjoy being petted or to hunt. Some cathodes have the ability to hide their animal features if needed. However, they do this dependent on the cathode. It's not very common that they hide their animal features, but that is due to other reasons why they would. How do cathodes react to other beastmen is actually unknown due to the lack of knowledge that we have on them. Of course, at the time of this document being made by Dr. R. After all, we only know of two. According to RGB and Fenrir, any others of his kind either died or has been taken by other races, such as the Protogens or the Beastmen or any other spacefaring race that may have abducted them due to their unique composition, I guess. Anodes, which is a subspecies of a cathode. So, if there's a failure during the soul transfer, something terrible emerges. It creates a glitchy mess, the screen never being exactly constant. So, this means that the colors and everything are always changing. The soul is fragmented. It moves in jerky and unnatural ways. However, they oftentimes still have the same personality of their soul, but they are a little insane or broken with shattered memories or missing feelings, causing some to be a little psychopathic, or sociopathic, but anodes are not common, and it is rare that the process fails. However, we often call these failures statics or anodes. Credit to Reddit user best letter is H for helping me come up with that name. And this would be, again, a subset of the cathodes. They are a glitchy mess, pretty much. Mental stability. All cathodes are not 100% mentally stable. Of course, this is a pick and choose, so if you want your cathode to be 100% mentally stable, feel free. However, it is not very common. After all, they did die. Are not 100% mentally stable. Most of the time, it is minor with them developing things like ADHD, and other times, especially with older generations, it will be a lot more major, such as broken moral compasses or straight up bouncing between sanity and insanity. Of course, they can be treated, and that's the reason why this occurs, is the process that it takes in order to make the cathode is extremely traumatic, not only to the body, but to the soul itself. Of course, most of the time, these mental problems might either go away or will be able to be treated. However, this takes time. Odd behaviors, as previously stated, all CRTVs are mistaken by cathodes for another cathode, quite often as well. Other odd behaviors, as insisting that they never age from the day that they die. So if a cathode dies at, let's say, 16 years of age, continue to insist that 16 virtually forever. Cathodes will also seem to get the instincts of the animal DNA that they've been injected with, so therefore odd behaviors also occur dependent on what animal that they get injected with, or the NG42 decides to make for them. So Fenrir will have wolf instincts, RGB will have whatever animal he has for instincts. Spoiler alert for free will, but Krieg would have raccoon instincts. Yes, Krieg is a raccoon. I do not know why I chose him for that. I just thought him being a cute little trickster would be funny. Anyway, we'll address that once I actually get to narrating that audiobook later. Update, new information. As of 2009, cathodes are not restricted to TVs for their heads. This experiment was done with a smart toaster. As long as the item has a screen, it can hold the cathode code/soul in its head. Further exploration is required. This could mean that we could make cathodes designed for navigation of rough terrain, or even have them be even more effective at serving the human race. making cathodes even superior to protogens. As a result, however, we must be careful not to be too rough with them, or they may rebel, and it could be the end of the human race as we know it. Their souls in the machines are stronger than most RNA industries are continuing to research and push boundaries. The species was finished by RGB on September 19th, 2024. Credit to Dulscar H0 on Reddit for the assistance with grammar and being the first one to read the species. This document was then edited September 27th, 2024, changed the name of anodes from static cathodes to, well, anodes. Credit was already given earlier. Document was edited October 2nd, 2024. Method of eating, credit to Vicey31008 on Reddit for the ideas. Grammar edit, new pictures, new features, first gen cathodes. October 8th, 2024, update on the lore, cathode behaviors and mental stability. October 20th, 2024, update on design choices and head changes was completed. December 12th, 2024, making RGB character with permission for use is done December 20th, 2024, and then that was also then revoked. So you cannot use RGB, however, if you ask me directly, you may be able to, but that is a separate thing altogether. Anyway, if you enjoyed sitting through this muddied mess of a single take YouTube video and enjoy watching me do a bunch of crappy artwork as I time-lapse it, feel free to share it, subscribe, all that stuff. I will start narrating my own audiobooks soon. I hope that you enjoy, and I thank you for listening in, and have a good day. Remember to like, share, subscribe, I guess, do all that malarkey, and have a good day.